Everybody sit down now so we can talk. Okay. I have to tell you what happened last night is I got involved with the similarities between Jim's story and mine. And I got way carried away and way too many pages. And so I got up this morning and I timed it and my printer wouldn't work. So I have just marked off places where I'm not going to speak, but I may be a little bit awkward. Okay. I started out saying Jim and I really had parallel cases. So I'll start chronologically. Thea and I became engaged to be married in 1967. Obviously, it was symbolic. We never expected to be able to marry. I was in the closet. Thea asked if I could wear an engagement ring to work, and I said absolutely not. And she conned me on a trip to the Hamptons. She conned me until I said, I think the solution would be a round pin with diamonds. And then she got out of the car, I got on her knees, and opened this thing and said, Edie Windsor, will you marry me? Okay, so that was it. Okay. Obviously, it was symbolic. We never expected to be able to marry. In 1996, then President Clinton signed a new law, cruelly named the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, at which he said the federal government will recognize no marriage other than between a man and a woman, and nothing that looks like a marriage, as a matter of fact, which completed our sense of not a chance. Our own attitudes and hopes changed, though, when Mary Bonato sued and won marriage for same-sex couples in Massachusetts, establishing the idea of possibility. Sometime in there, a suit in New York State confirmed that although New York State would not perform marriages of same-sex couples, its constitution clearly established that the state would recognize all legal marriages. This is one of those pages that has to go. So I sued, and Edith Schlein Windsor versus United States of America is what we got. Okay. But, oh God, I can't leave it all out here. Okay, as you all know, I was in the district level when the President and Justice Department agreed that DOMA was unconstitutional and they would no longer defend it. I won in the appeals court with a glorious declaration, and then the name of the case was changed for the Supreme Court. It became the United States versus Edith Windsor. I'll make a fast explanation of that. The government, walked in and said, to have a case in the Supreme Court, you need two opposing things. And we didn't have any because the opponents were considered without status. So Obama and the Justice Department came in and said, we have to obey the law even if we think it's unconstitutional. And she wants her money. And we can't give her money. Okay, so she's nagging us, right? And that was the condition, that was the thing which made it possible for them to sue me. And as you all know, we both won. Okay. Though not explicitly stated that way, my decision only applied to people whose states allowed same-sex couples to marry. Now, to the rescue, the President Obama, the next day after my decision, announced that federal recognition with all the benefits and responsibilities applies to everyone who is legally married in their home state or not. Now, Jim and John. Jim met and fell in love with John Arthur in 1992. John was diagnosed with ALS, the Lou Gehrig disease, a fatal neurological illness. Shortly after the Windsor decision, John and Jim decided to get married and were married aboard a medical jet on a Maryland airport tarmac. I mean, how is that? Okay, they flew in. They already had their proper person who was going to handle the cases, the marriage itself, in their plane. They were married on the tarmac and then returned. So what was still missing? My win and Obama's rescue applied to federal rights only for married couples. It wasn't clear what happened if you married out of your state, which not only did not allow marriage, but also did not recognize your out-of-state marriage. Jim and John's state, Ohio, did not recognize their marriage. They then filed suit in federal court against the state of Ohio to demand recognition of their lawful marriage on John's pending death certificate. John died in October 2013, and the state of Ohio appealed to the 6th District Court of Appeals, that's the 6th Circuit, and that court ruled against John and Jim, as well as 6 plaintiffs from 5 other cases in Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, and Tennessee, setting the stage for an appeal to the Supreme Court. The response: the Supreme Court consolidated all 6 cases into one. Jim Obergefell became the lead plaintiff in the landmark marriage equality case. And the name of the case was, of all of them, was Obergefell et al. Versus Hodges, Director of the Ohio Department of Health et al., which addressed the separate pleas. There were 2 separate pleas, and each of those states had to place all of their information based on the part of it that they cared about. The first one was make marriage accessible in every state for all American couples, same or opposite sex. And the second part was make every state responsible to recognize marriage in every other state. Jim's was the latter, I think. I don't know, I started to say, I'm going to make this short too. I don't know why Jim became the lead plaintiff, but I'd like to guess from my experience with him since we met. 1, his story is so compelling, heartwarming, and heartbreaking. I know I've touched it throughout this talk, but I'd like to summarize it here. I'm not going to summarize it. You heard it all there, okay? Okay? Yeah, right. Okay. Of the 6 cases, Jim received the most amicus briefs. I read this somewhere on the internet, but I can't find it again to document it. So I could be wrong. Right. Third thing, Jim's passion, was so evident and so meaningful to so many of us. And I think that probably had a lot to do with it. And the last thing was his charm. I followed SCOTUS blog and the newspapers during the month of possible decisions. Jim's charm and popularity and enthusiasm stuck out so that almost every one of the 2 days a week where one might expect a decision, newspapers mentioned his position and the line waiting for a seat. Inside, the crowds running up to shake his hand and thank him until the last day when SCOTUS blog itself reported Jim was first in line. Okay, it was like a major piece of information in the day. Oral arguments were held in April 2015, this year. On June 26, 2015, the second anniversary of my win, crushing DOMA, the Supreme Court ruled in the plaintiff's favor, bringing marriage equality throughout the United States. They won. Jim, you want to come out here? Okay. They won for their cases, and for all of us. On June 26, 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, said that the 14th Amendment requires all states to grant marriage to couples of the same sex and requires that they must recognize marriages granted in other states between 2 people of the same sex when their marriages were lawfully licensed and performed out of state. As the lead plaintiff in this humongously important to all of us case, Jim Obergefell gave his name, his heartwarming story, his presence in line and inside, and a multitude of appearances whenever requested. Jim speaks of himself as an accidental activist. Again, we're alike. I speak of myself as an accident of history. But that's not all. Jim is now committed to continuing the fight for civil rights and equality for all Americans. Jim, will you come out here, please?